Welcome to the Everyday Citizens Tactical Podcast, Episode 1, What is the Podcast? My name is Jeremy and I will be your host. We have a lot of things to cover today, so without further delay, let's get started.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.
Once again, guys, welcome to the podcast. This is the very first episode. This is the premiere. So for everyone that is listening, when this first comes out, I thank you very much for being here with us. We have a whole lot to talk about. I'm going to talk about, who I am, what the company is, why we are kind of moved forward with the podcast. And then we're going to kind of talk about some, culture and the tough times ahead and a little bit of what is to come and kind of what we expect. So we have a whole lot to get over, so we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. So who am I? Who is Jeremy? If you have not followed any of my old pages before the social media purge or followed me on YouTube and seen all of the things I've put on there, I'm from Kentucky. I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years, predominantly as embassy security. Got out, went to the fire academy, and now I work in fire and EMS. And, I kind of came up with Everyday Citizens Tactical briefly before I got out of the Marine Corps. It was probably 4 or 5 months before I got out, right at the end of 2019. I got out of the Marine Corps in March of 2020, so right when COVID had hit. But I came up with the idea for ECT right at the end of 2019. And I always knew when I was getting ready to get out and I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I knew I wanted to be a fireman, but I knew I wanted to continue to kind of teach and instruct on the firearm side. And, I really had a passion for this kind of stuff. And although everything's kind of changed a little bit, I never really saw myself kind of coming up with medical products or talking prepping as much and just everything else that I have. And I've always had interest in that kind of stuff, specifically the prepping portion. But it's kind of grown to something I didn't expect, but in a really good way. And I think a lot of exposure to different people and different ideas through social media has kind of helped feather that in a sense, helped lead me in that direction. But what is Everyday Citizens Tactical? So the purpose of the company as it stands now and kind of what it's developed into is to change the standards of professionalism and training for everyone, but more specifically civilians. And I feel like there's been a very good shift in culture over the past probably 2, maybe 3 years now at this point, of what used to be the expectation for civilian training and what a civilian should be capable of, and what is now the expectation and what is starting to become more available through different companies' trainings and whatnot. And there's been a lot of big influencers through the years that have helped kind of tailor us in that direction. Grand Thumb, T-Rex Arms, and Lucas over there, John Lavelle from Warrior Poet Society, and a lot of other pages and influencers and companies along the way have helped take us there. But, I feel like we can continue to take that even further, and with Everyday Citizens Tactical and hopefully people I bring on in the future and the content we continue to push and the classes we create, that we can really diversify the skills and the knowledge and education for civilians. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later when we talk about community and preparedness and whatnot. But, that basically wraps up what is Everyday Citizens Tactical. I don't really see us as a product company in a sense as I do an educational source. Yes, we came out with the medical kits, and I'm really proud of the medical kits, both the IFAC and the IFAC Pluses. But that wasn't fully the reason why we were made. Although I feel like there was a bit of a gap that was filled. On a side tangent, there's a lot of companies that make medical kits. However, I feel like sometimes, and this kind of goes with all products, there seems to be a lack of purpose sometimes when something is created. Specifically our everyday IFAC Pluses, those were specifically made to be as applicable to everyone as it possibly can be. And it fills a lot of gaps and fills a lot of roles of what, a compact medical kit should do. But I digress. This is not a product promotion. Nonetheless, I've been on a couple podcasts in the past, The Undesirable Individuals and The Polar Connection with Max the Misfit, and then Good Old Hoplite. And people have asked me since I've been on those if I would ever move forward with making a podcast, specifically when I started taking YouTube a little bit more serious. And in the beginning, I really didn't have much of a desire to run multiple social media accounts and the YouTube and the business and do a podcast, at least not while I was all by myself. However, that kind of changed at the beginning of March when a lot of our social medias got deleted. I mean, we probably lost well over 100 accounts, hundreds of accounts, I'd say, small and big. Even people that weren't influencers to any extent or posted any type of extensive knowledge or anything like that, they found themselves caught on the purge train. And I'm not really sure why or how we got to that point. I think it's just something we kind of have to deal with based on the niche and the culture or the corner of social media that we're on. Nonetheless, I really like doing YouTube. However, if my time is limited on social media, or I'm going to continue to have to fight bans and whatnot and constantly crawl back, I feel like there are better ways for me to continue to push different types of education and content and kind of more in-depth discussions without necessarily making a YouTube video for everything. Because making a YouTube video and making something like an Instagram post with a really detailed caption, or even making a podcast episode, those are all really different things. They kind of have to be approached differently. And nonetheless, I very much enjoy making content and creating content and spreading knowledge. Though it's still in the very beginning stages and very, very basics. If you have never seen it, we have on our website, there is a section called the Minuteman Concept underneath of online education. And under that tab, there are a ton of different PowerPoints that go over a lot of the basics to different aspects of patrolling. And some preparedness, setting up a Minuteman group or some sort of MAG group in your local area, medical and all that kind of stuff. So I really like making content. I like pushing out education, and I like sharing other people's content and education. And I feel like there's a lot of people that know things that I don't know, because you always have to constantly be learning. So the goal with this and with the podcast is not only to share my own motivational or educational ideas and concepts, but also to bring other people on that I think specifically fit into some sort of subject matter expert area. So I'm going to try to always have some sort of guest on outside of this episode. There may be onesies, twosies where I do not have a guest, but I'm pretty much going to always try to have a guest on. So that kind of leads us into how's the podcast going to be set up. So the podcast is going to come out the first and the third Monday of every month, no matter what day, like actual numerical day it falls on, or if the month has 4 Mondays or 5 Mondays, it will always be the first and third Monday of the month. So those months where there happens to be 5 Mondays, there will probably be a bit of a lull. But for consistency and to make sure that I'm always able to push out a podcast episode, because I do have my own career, my own life, and other responsibilities. So I give myself a 2-week window to hopefully get somebody on, record an episode, edit it, and push it out. The episode itself is not edited in a sense. What you hear is what you get, but there are some small editing, uploading things that go in with that. But so I'm not really sure if I'm going to break this down into a season type thing. I think it's just going to just be episodes. I'll eventually be sitting here one day like Joe Rogan, freaking episode 346 or something. But I'm going to continue to bring on guests, and we're going to talk about a whole wide range of stuff. And in those individual topics, there's going to be individual subjects and all those types of things. We're going to bring on guys to talk about medical, prepping, culture, firearms, gear, tactics. I mean, there is no limit to this podcast. My goal with this podcast is to give everyone the most diverse source of information that they possibly can find. And hopefully, we'll make some more connections along the way and just lead people to other people's pages and channels and whatnot so they can find even more information and so on and so forth. Really, at the end of the day, we're trying to find a way around social media constantly trying to push us down, which means this podcast will not be monetized at any point in time. It will always be free, hopefully. by the time this is all said and done, it will at least be available on the podcast website, YouTube, and Spotify. Those are going to be the big three that I push out. Will there be others? There might be others eventually, and we may get to other sources. But for now, that is going to be where we stay. So if you are not aware, we are back on Instagram, and we created a Facebook page. For the time being, we are slowly crawling our way back into that. However, I don't know how long they will tolerate me or the company or any other influencers or content creators like me, because for some reason social media just does not like what we do. And that kind of brings me on to, the change of culture that I briefly want to discuss here in episode 1. Years ago, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about civilians and, what they were expected to train on, what they were expected to know. Years ago, it kind of felt like civilians, your main concepts were, your home defense and your concealed carry stuff, and like that was it. That's what a civilian should know. However, I think that's really starting to change. I think kind of that more rifleman, infantry kind of mindset is kind of starting to come into a sense. And I'm not saying that all civilians are infantrymen. All my 03s and 11 Bravos don't be causing a ruckus now. But there was a post that went around on Instagram a couple days ago. This was recorded about halfway through April. So there was a post. I can't remember who posted it, so I apologize. I'm not giving you a shout out for it. But it was this post, and it said, civilians should know infantry tactics or infantry skills, something like that. And everybody shared it. Everybody loved it. And I think that's part of the changing culture that we need to start to move towards. Your 2v2s and your really fast reloads and your split times and all that. That stuff's cool. That stuff has its place. But I feel like, and we are doing it, but we need to do even more, is continue to change as a culture and where we stand on, our actual capabilities and our limitations in a sense, because you have to know your limitations in order to operate to the best of your ability. If you work outside of your limitations, things obviously fail. So continuing to kind of, organize on a community level, and then working on your land nav skills, your patrolling skills, then your medical skills, your radio skills, your recon skills, your area studies and intelligence skills, and it just continues to go on more and more. And then you're also prepping, and you got guys in the group that are gardening, and people are making connections at farmers markets and doing all these types of things. This is what we need to continue to do more of. I think the reason a lot of these types of movements have failed on social media and here in the U.S. in the past is everybody starts to think too much of big picture. Everybody wants to nationalize a movement in a sense, and we can't do that. It's because what goes on in Oregon is different than what goes on in Arkansas, and what goes on in New York is different than what goes on in South Carolina, and so on and so forth. What goes on the west side of Texas may be differently than what goes on the east side of Texas, and it goes on more and more into that. So we really need to start thinking about our community, our family, our friends, and thinking small picture. Maybe your state as big as it gets. Your cluster of counties or your county itself, that should be your sphere of influence. That's where you should be getting to know people, finding people to train with, finding people to prepare with, and changing the minds and the culture on the small scale. That's where everything changes. You're not going to change thousands of people's minds on Facebook going on some wild rants. However, you could probably change a couple dozen minds on your community level. And then those couple dozen people talk to a couple other people. And it continues to grow and grow and grow. And, this goes outside of just, the prepping and tactics and all that kind of stuff. That also goes on the morality and the ethics side, and kind of returning to a sense of traditionalism. And when I say traditionalism, that could mean one of 1,000 things. And, you may perceive it differently than I perceive it. And I'm sure there will eventually become an episode where we talk about what I mean by traditionalism. Maybe traditionalism is the wrong word. But I think there needs to be a step back from where we are at now. And I think that goes across a wide range of political topics and social aspects of our society. Like I said, that will probably be a topic for another time. Probably a couple episodes from now, I have an episode planned to discuss gun culture and the effects of social media and all that kind of stuff. So expect that a deeper talk onto those types of subjects later in the future. And guys, times are getting tougher. They are. The price of everything continues to increase. World political affairs is starting to come to a boiling point. I don't think anybody's really a fan of the feds at this point, or even their own states. Even neighbors don't like neighbors anymore, and times are getting tougher. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what's going to happen. There will always be a light side on the other side. Things don't stay bad forever. The world is not going to end. The world as we know it may end, but the world is not going to end. There will be in a sense, a good perspective or a good outcome eventually. Is that 50 years from now? Is that 100 years from now? Is it 5 years from now? Is it 5 months from now? I have no idea, and that's not really the point of all of this. The point of this is that times are getting tougher, and if you're not putting in the extra effort to work on your physical fitness and your mental health, you're not taking the time to prep proper supplies, specifically food. If you're not buying quality gear, you're not training with your gear. Those are the types of things that needs to change. You should be grinding. I know that sounds very stereotypical. There's a ton of people that talk about, oh, you got to do the grind. I'm serious. You got to grind. There is many things that need to be done all of the time. And you either want to be ready and you want to be a better you, or you don't want to be. And it doesn't matter if you're a man, female, old, young, married, or single. Find time, because there is time. That is one of the biggest things I hate is when people say, oh, I don't have time. You have time. What you have a ton of right now is excuses. You need to turn those excuses into a work ethic, whatever that may be. I digress, again, for another episode. And this episode's not really long, guys. That's really just kind of wanted to give you guys an opening idea, general thought process as to what to expect from this and the podcast. I'm not going to necessarily always, try to promote the company in a sense, like, oh, we've got this new product on sale this day, blah, blah, blah. That's not my goal with any of this. I'll probably, mention stuff like that from time to time, but there's not going to be just these big, long spiels about that, and I'm not going to pause in the middle of episodes and talk about it and all that kind of stuff. I'll probably just give it a little shout out here at the end, or, shout out other companies or classes that I think is worth it. And like I said, continue to spread the knowledge. If you don't buy a medical kit from Everyday Citizens Tactical, or you don't take one of our medical classes or our firearms classes, I hope you just buy a medical kit from someone, a quality medical kit, or you take a class from somebody. Continue to make yourself better. Continue to prep. Prepping is going to be a big one that we push, and it's definitely going to be big on the social media. I digress. One thing I will mention, guys, is that we are hosting our first medical class here in May in the Cincinnati area. It's going to be right here in Northern Kentucky in Fort Thomas, literally minutes from Cincinnati. So if you're in the area and you're in search of a good medical class, go to our website, check out the details. The class is only $50 for the month of April, and after that it goes back to its normal $75 price. It is May 21st here in Fort Thomas. So we're going to be doing a ton of stuff, guys, with that. I have really put some serious thoughts into it, and I'm not the only instructor for the class. We have really tried to change what a traditional civilian medical class looks like. And we're going to be going over anatomy and patient assessment and scene size up, in alignment with different types of first aid, and, going through the March algorithm. There's going to be a ton of hands-on and prac gap. It's going to be a very good class, and I can only hope that it continues to evolve as time goes on. So if you're looking for a good medical class, last time I mentioned it, guys, go over to our website and sign up for that. Class size is limited because I don't want to mess up the student to instructor ratio. That is all I will talk about on our stuff, guys. That really about wraps that up, guys. Like I said, every week I'm going to be getting on you guys about prepping, doing the things. Doing the things is the big thing. YouTube will still continue to be a thing. I'm probably going to push out a YouTube video or two a week. Just kind of depends on what life schedule has to throw at me. But YouTube videos will continue. to be a thing. Social media posts will continue to be a thing. This is really more of a way for me to share other people's thoughts and or opinions on things and or knowledge along with myself in a way that's kind of easier to listen to in a sense. I know I very much like listening to a podcast as I drive from place to place, or if I'm just kind of have some lull time and I want to play something in the background. I really like podcasts, and that's why I think I listen to most on Spotify. So that is where we're at with that, guys. Thank you guys for joining us. Again, this was not going to be a very long episode, just a basic rundown of what to expect, who we are, and, hopefully we see all of you again in the future. As always, guys, train hard, train often.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and